Hi, this is the orderIT trading system evaluation for December the 7th, 2020. We had 17 trades on that day, 7 were buys and 10 were short sells. Starting the review. First trade is CVE. That's Synovus Energy Incorporated. It tripped at 12:11:09 at a price of 574. It was a buy trade. It closed the day at 565, so we'll see if there's any point where it's showing above that 575, roughly 572, 573, 570. Yeah, I'm going to say it's a possible just because of the fact that it seemed like it stayed up after its trip price, but did not come much above it. I saw it like maybe for 10-minute period it was up maybe 1 cent maybe, but I don't consider it a long enough period to be a positive trade. So we'll look at the indicators, see if it is a possible. OBV looks okay, moving sideways for most of the day. You can see the end of the day it looks like it was dropping though. MACD actually was showing majority of the day it was actually moving downwards. So MACD is moving downwards in the afternoon. It came up a bit but then reverted. Interestingly, while MACD was showing somewhat of a negative movement, DI is showing somewhat of a positive movement. And MACD is showing negative for most of the day. DI is actually showing positive. So you basically have two conflicting indicators there, and it obviously makes it difficult to make a all-around evaluation based on those two evaluation periods. Bollinger Band though was showing that it was somewhat. It came up, then you can see it moving down a little bit, so it did come up to a point, then went down, recovered a little bit, came down, but in general Bollinger Band moving it somewhat sideways, so I consider that a positive, I consider that a very, very good possible trade. Excuse me. Next trade is FCEL. Let's say the name of the stock first. Fuel Cell Energy Incorporated. It tripped at 12:30 p.m. at a price of 8.13. It was another buy trade, and it closed at 783. It was actually down 1.51%, and you can see it did recover a bit. Early morning it recovered. It's up to $8, even though it's not up to even where it tripped the day previously. So it looked like this tripped on a uprise on its day activity, and we'll see if there's any movement above it that would indicate potential low. Look right where it trades. No, that definitely is not a positive trade. Check the indicator, see if that gives indication. It tripped OBV wise there, and then it just moved down. MACD again tripped at the high point, then moved down. DI showing very negative movement actually, so DI is actually not even showing again, tripped at its tripping price, but then moved down. And Bollinger Band, no, that definitely is a not good trade if you did trip it. So next trade is CLRB, Cellular Bioscience Incorporated. It tripped at 1:05:58 p.m. at a price of 2.32. It was a buy trade. It closed at 235.000, obviously up 15.2%. So that's a good positive trade. You can see it actually came up a good amount for the day. So that's a positive trade. And the indicators are showing excuse me. OBV is looking good. It was moving up and stayed upwards. MACD showing that it came up early afternoon, but it was actually down a good portion of the day. It did have a recovery in the day. Middle afternoon was moving up and recovering in the day in a positive way. DI showing that it was somewhat positive in the morning, which was somewhat a negative of the actual MACD, and it's showing strong positive at the end of the day. So indicators not concretely positive, but they still were showing somewhat a positive movement, and Bollinger Band showing it was moving up fairly consistently. So that would have been a good trade overall. Next trade is ET, Energy Transfer. It tripped at 110.03 at a price of $6.90. It was also another buy trade. It closed at 670, down 3.32%, so it actually was closed below its previous open. Actually, it closed below its previous close. You can see it made its rise up around here, and just dropped. So the price activity is not showing anything. It was showing that it looked like it made movement in the morning, but then reverted. OBV showing somewhat moving sideways and then dropped in the afternoon. MACD showing the same thing, basically moving sideways and dropped in the afternoon, but it was making recovery at the end of the day, MACD wise. DI actually showing again positive in the morning somewhat, but then it actually had a big drop in the afternoon. It made a little bit of recovery late afternoon, and negative. So the indicators are not showing any strong positive movement, so I can't even mark that as a possible. So I'm going to say that is another negative in general. This is somewhat of an indication of the day itself. The markets, general indicators, not really showing that yesterday was a good day. So these positive results we're seeing probably just a result of that. The markets were just not moving strong for yesterday. So we have GEVO Incorporated. It tripped at 1:15 p.m. at a price of 173. It was a short sell. It closed the day at 167, down 7.73%, so it was dropping fairly strongly, but you can see it was making a recovery early morning. But it was down for the most part of the day, so that's a positive trade. Positive trade. Check the analysis to see if that is indicating OBV somewhat sideways, a bit of a drop early mid-afternoon, then moving sideways again. MACD showing the same thing. It dropped. It was actually dropping all early afternoon, then recovered. DI is actually showing that it was moving very heavily negative in the afternoon, and even late afternoon showing down. Bollinger Band showing down negative. So this stock was moving down, and the end result is yes, you could have made money on this one. Next trade is EOG. That's EOG Resources. It tripped at 1:45:05 p.m. at a price of $51.40. It is a short sell, and surprisingly it closed at 51.57, so it closed above its tripping price, but it was down 2.7%. We'll see if there's any point. 40. So you can see it tripped right around here. Down here was 51.28, so that was down below. 51.27, 51.48. So the afternoon it came up, but there was two periods that roughly would have been roughly about half an hour of time that it was down below its tripping price. I consider that a positive because there was a point in the day that you could have gotten out positively wise. But you can see it somewhat was moving sideways in the afternoon, and even though it did drop down. We'll see if the analysis is showing the same thing. OBV showing it did move down morning, or moved down in the early afternoon, basically after that moving sideways. MACD showing the same thing, actually making recovery in the afternoon, which we were somewhat seeing a bit in the price itself. DI showing majority of the day it was moving down, and at the end of the day it actually was moving down also, even though it looked like the moving a bit positive at the end of the day. So it was positive moving up, but negative was up, so it did drop also in the afternoon. And Bollinger Band basically showing you it was somewhat a steady downward trend, and you can see roughly around this time is where you could have made your profit, because it tripped right around this period, and you made your profit around here where it was down at its low for the day, but then made a bit of a recovery. So again, a trade that would have had to be followed, but you could have gotten out positively on that trade. Next trade is CNK. Excuse me. That's Sinmark Holdings. It tripped at 1:45:35 p.m. at a price of 14.06. Another short sell. It closed at 13.80, down 4.5%. And you can see it's recovering early morning a bit, but it was down, so that's another positive trade. Sheet analysis is indicating that in a strong way. OBV, yeah, OBV looked pretty much going down for the whole day. MACD going down for the most part. There you can see it looks like MACD is showing that it was moving sideways in the afternoon. DI though was actually showing down also for most of the day, and you can see afternoon it was showing a strong downward trend. Bollinger Band, yeah, just showing it moving down. So that trade definitely was moving down. It would have been a positive trade at the end of the day. FTCH, Farfetch Limited. It tripped at 1:45:47 p.m. and a price of 56.90, and it was a short sell. It closed at 56.86, and it was down 0.52%. So it did drop below its tripping price, so you could have gotten out positively on that. But you can see it actually is making a recovery early morning, so it basically is recovering pretty much what it lost the day before. But it was a positive trade because it ended the day below its tripping price. Again, these are the stocks that you need to be careful about day trading, is the aspect that, you know, the stock can definitely come back, especially on short sells, because short sells are a very, very, very tricky type of trade to make, because you're betting on the aspect that the stock is moving down, and unless they're heavily moving downwards, they can definitely make a recovery at the end of the day. And I can see this is not out very much, so I'm going to increase that out a bit more. I minimize my stock trading system is showing negative limits. Anyways, okay, so the indication, OBV showing somewhat sideways and making a bit of recovery at the end of the day. MACD showing the same thing, it was making recovery at the end of the day. DI showing actually it was more negative, even during the period where it was making recovery. MACD wise, DI was still somewhat strongly negative. At the end of the day, it actually closed down. Bollinger Band showing somewhat a steady downward trend, so that stock definitely for the day was moving down. Would have been a positive trade on the end result. Next trade is PBF Energy. It tripped at 1:50:21 p.m. at a price of $7.99. It was a short sell. It closed at 7.84, down 5.66%. So that's another positive trade by end of day. And you can see early morning it's also down. So if you didn't get it by the end of the day, you would have gotten it early morning, because early morning is showing that it's down. So that stock itself definitely is negative moving and would have been positive trade result by the end of the day. OBV showing it down. At the end of the day, making a bit of recovery. MACD showing same thing, more sideways, but at the end of the day, it was moving down. DI, look, DI is showing negative across the board and very heavily negative. So DI showing that it's moving negative. Bollinger Band, yeah, just showing it was just dropping. So what you're seeing is an absolute consequence of the trade activity, and the indicators are showing exactly that same kind of movement. Next trade is CLR, that's Continental Resources. It's tripped at 156.51 at a price of 18.35. It was a short sell. It closed at 17.87, down 5.25%. So that's another positive trade. Check the analysis. Excuse me. OBV showing end of the day it was dropping. MACD showing somewhat the whole day it was dropping. DI actually was showing that it was moving positive in the morning, but in the afternoon it may moving negative and strongly negative. And Bollinger Bands, yeah, Bollinger Bands showing it somewhat a steady negative movement also. So that stock was definitely moving down. GBT, Global Blood Therapeutics. It tripped at 2:15 p.m. at a price of 40.85. It was a short sell. It actually closed at 41.35, so it recovered from its tripping price at a price of 41.35, but it still was down 5.7% over the previous day. So you can see with the 40.85 was probably closer to 8-9% that it was down at its lowest. And we'll see at 2:15. God, right there, and you see 47, 45, okay. There's about a half an hour period here, around the 3 to 3:30 p.m. period that it was down below its tripping price. I consider that a positive, because there was a period of time where it was down below its tripping price that you could have gotten out. If you were evaluating this, you probably may have started to say, hey, it tripped, and then you can see it was moving sideways, and to say, okay, I can't take the chance of hoping it moves down more. I'll get out when it moves below the tripping price, which it did occur around this period of time. So there was a period of time, but it's just a matter of how you monitor and evaluate the stock itself. OBV, look, OBV is showing this stock was just moving down, and again, end of the day is making a bit of recovery. MACD is actually showing moving more positive, negative. And you can see MACD and DI are actually conflicting. DI is showing that it was moving fairly negative for the most part. Bollinger Bands showing that it moved down, and you can see this sideways movement we saw, and then a bit of recovery at the end of the day. If it wasn't a potential that there occurred in the late mid-afternoon, this would have been a definite possible trade. But again, there was a period that it did drop below its tripping price, so I consider that a positive trade. Next trade is D. That's Dominion Energy Incorporated. It tripped at 2:20:03 p.m. at a price of 75.56, a short sell. It closed at 76.14, and it actually was up from previous close, not by a large amount, but by a certain amount. And we can see at 2:20, right there, and then it made recovery. Yeah, that just happened to be a stock that was moving more positive than negative, obviously. And OBV, you can see this period in the afternoon where it was moving down, which is where it tripped. MACD was down. It tripped right when it was moving downwards, but again, you can see this big recovery it made at the end of the day. DI showing that it was a good portion of the day. It was positive, it was negative, but in the day, middle afternoon, where it started making that recovery right after the tripping point. I won't consider that a possible. I won't consider it possible. To me, that's a negative trade for the most part, just because of the fact that Indicators were not consistent heavily, and we're showing somewhat more of a positive, showing as much a positive as negative, if not more so. So the end result is that that stock itself is just not moving in the direction indicated by the tripping activity. Next trade is IBM, International Business Machines Corporation. Tripped at 225.15 at a price of 125.07. It was a short sell. It closed the day at 124.70. It was down 1.97%. Made a recovery early morning though, but again still a positive result because you would have been able to get out below its tripping price. OBV just showing it moving downwards. MACD, actually, MACD. Morning moving down, middle of the afternoon moving down, but the rest of the day was actually moving up. But look, again, this is another contradiction between MACD and DI. DI is showing right across the board this stock was negative and very heavily negative, and MACD showing somewhat off and on negative, but not as consistent as DI. And Bollinger Band, look at that, just a drop, so consistently dropping. So again, that stock was moving down consistently, even though the indicators somewhat were not as concrete as expected. NETE. That's Net Element Incorporated. It tripped at 2:25:26 p.m. at a price of 11.41. It was a buy trade. It closed at 11.10, down 2.03%. So that is another tricky trade. And look, it closed at 2.25. So it was down here 11.29. Well, no, it said 2.25. See, the price itself is actually not showing it at 221. It seems like the actual tripping price does not match up with the time frame. And 1141 was up around here, yeah. 231. So it probably just happened to mark it as a price above it. So we'll leave it at that as a inconsistency, but there's a good period here for about half an hour where it was above its, you see at least half an hour where it was above its tripping price. I was going to consider that a negative trade, but because there was a period where it was up above its tripping price that you could have gotten out at, that makes this a positive trade. Check the analysis. Analysis OBV-wise, showing that it just jumped up here at this point in time, which basically is mimicking the trade activity. MACD showing the same thing. MACD, look, it came up and then dropped, which is the reason why you're showing that negative result. The stock itself is showing that it was a consequence of this reversal at the end of the day. So the afternoon it was just dropping, but basically up until the mid-afternoon, mid-afternoon it was moving upwards. And DI, look at that. MACD and DI this time are consistent. They're showing that it was basically moving very positive in the morning, early afternoon, and then it hit that high point, and then it started reversing. Bollinger Band showing the same thing. Everything is showing the same thing. So there's no question about what it was doing. Obviously, it moved up until mid-afternoon and then dropped, and so we have that trade there, and I have to recenter myself because I just 1350, 1356, 1415, 1420, 1425. Okay, back to where I was at. So again, that was a positive trade, but you can see this is a good trade to understand the activity market-wise, that the markets were down this stock itself looked like it had a high potential moving upwards, and it was moving upwards, but just because of the market activity, it just reversed at the end of the day and came back down. So it's just a matter of that you actually have to monitor the markets closely also as you are monitoring a stock. Excuse me. Next trade is FLGT. It tripped at 3:06:13 p.m. at a price of 45.61. It was another buy trade. It closed the day at 45.63, so it was up, and up 4.78%. So that's another positive trade. By the end of the day, it's positive. OBB showing that it peaked and came down a bit and then moved sideways a little bit. MACD showing the same thing, came up and then moved sideways a bit. It did come down mid-afternoon. DI showing the same thing. It was actually positive all morning till mid-afternoon, and then making a little bit of a reversal. So this stock is somewhat similar to the previous stock, even though this stock maintained its price above the tripping price for the end of the day. And you can see again, Bollinger Bands also showing that it came up, came down a bit, and then started moving sideways. So that stock was actually maintaining its price level. Next trade is GMDA. That's Gamidia Cell Limited. It tripped at 3:10:13 at a price of 10.50. It was another buy trade. It closed the day 10.89. The stock was up 56%. So the fact that this was a positive trade should not have been a question mark, just because of the fact that the stock was over 50% above its previous close. So this stock was moving heavily. So something obviously with this stock caused something major to occur, or let's say something major in the company occurred, because 56%, you don't see that kind of movement without something in the company that occurred that would have caused that to make that kind of movement. OBV, basically moved up, moved sideways. MACD, somewhat bouncing back and forth. It actually was dropping in the early afternoon, making a recovery mid-afternoon. DI showing somewhat the same kind of results. So yeah, Bollinger Band actually showing the more positive activity. It was basically showing somewhat of a steady movement upwards, but this would have been, you can see the stock. The stock actually moved a good amount, 9.32 to 10.90. So $10.83. So it moved up almost $1.50 even during the day. So it actually moved a good amount during the daytime. You can see it's making a bit of a reversal, but still maintain it, so it's not dropping heavily early morning. But again, it was a stock that was positive for the most part of the day. Next trade is GLUU. That is Glue Mobile Incorporated. It tripped at 3:50 p.m. at a price of $9.42. It was a short sell, and it closed at $9.41, down 2.39%. I consider that a positive trade because it closed below its tripping price. Not by much, but still potential of getting out positively. Actually, I was on the wrong stock, please. 1506. Yeah, it was off the stock. Anyways, okay. Anyways, doesn't have big much. All the stocks here were all positive anyways at the end of the day. Yeah, you can see, look, OBV it was making a recovery early afternoon and then just dropped. MACD showing the same thing, early afternoon and then dropped. DI, same sort of movement. DI showing negative in the afternoon, very strong, and Bollinger Band showing positive. So that stock in general is just down for the day, and we caught it right at the end of the day at 350. So I say it's a positive just because of the fact that end of the day positive, but it is like it's an end of day stock that was tripped. So if you had taken anything out at that stock, you would have had a very short period of time to get out. But then again, it did close below its tripping price. So the end result is a very somewhat non-strong day on the markets in general, and consequently wise we had a lot more sells that occurred because of it. But again, positively wise, we have 13 trades out of 17 trades that you could have made money on, so that's still 76%. So while there was a couple of stocks that were very questionable, the end result is there's still a large amount of stocks that would have resulted in positive trades. So again, the day results for this activity is positive. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.